There's a lot of challenges of unconventional parenting. I think the first challenge is that we think it's unconventional, that there is the idea that there's something that is conventional, what parenting should look like, that it should be a two-parent household, certain class, certain religion, certain faith, certain culture, the dominant, if you will, the dominant culture. And then we live in a society where dominance is the culture, really. That one thing is primary thing, and this is the way everyone should uphold to. So for me, as a single parent, I think that unconventional parenting is my parenting. Like, I love it when my son says, "Mom, I love our family," and the fact that he sees us as a family, even when society may not. But he knows that family is love. We have a very extended family. We believe in the village concept. So he's really adapted. He has like 8 brothers and sisters in his mind, because all of his friends that are, friends of children of my friends are all his sisters and brothers. And I'm teaching him to like look out for each other, because we're all connected in this world. And so he has aunts and uncles. He's with an auntie right now who doesn't share the same blood as him at all. His babysitters are all his aunties. So we just see each other as very connected in that way. And again, we're just fostering that compassion, that connection, things that I think everyone needs in life.
When I think of unconventional parenting, I guess I think that conventional parenting means you're in the mainstream. You're in the common the group of the most people that are like that, right? So probably the most conventional parenting is a mom and a dad that are still married, and they're a nuclear family in an American way. I guess in America, I'm talking about this culture here. So I guess I could see unconventional as being something outside of that. So for me, my experience is, again, being a divorced father and having my kids half the time. And I think when we're not in the mainstream, I sense many parents, and myself included, being very cautious about judgment and being very cautious that people won't accept us and that we're somehow different and somehow we won't be capable because we're not the mainstream. And so, as some of our colleagues mentioned in our other discussion, like when we're out in public, there's parts that scan and look and say, are we being judged? Or how are people receiving me as I'm walking around with no wedding ring with 2 kids? So what happens is that in our scanning or in our worry of being judged and not feeling like you get me, because you don't look around, you don't see very many people like me, so do you get me? We start having parts that come up that protect, right? So we overparent in public so that people see we're good enough. Like, I'm gonna do my best parenting behavior in front of you to show you I am a good father. I'm not a deadbeat dad, and the kids are like, why are you acting weird, Dad? So I think that when you don't have people like you and you're not the mainstream, we have to really work with our parts that feel separate and that feel possibly judged, or that really aren't judged in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of judgment out there if you don't fit in the mainstream. So when we feel anything but accepted, oftentimes our parts come forth, and we just have to watch that and see, okay, what is this happening? What's happening for me? So if I'm in this environment and I might be at a kid's birthday party and there's mom and dad, mom and dad, mom and dad, mom and dad, and me. I could sense I would have parts that might want to pull away and disengage from the others. The kids are having fun and the parents are having fun, and it might affect my child, because my child looks at me, why is Dad just sitting there not engaging with people? Like, that's weird. So it adds, like, I'm adding tension or I'm adding discomfort. I don't know. I just think that it's like feeling like an other.
I think one of the biggest challenges in unconventional family system is that there isn't a norm to compare to all the time. There isn't oh, here's the community of all the other people who are like me. And it invites in so much insecurity or self-doubt or fear. Fear that I might not be doing it right. fear that I don't have somebody to compare this to or to talk it out to, or my gosh, if I go and talk to somebody, they're going to be like, well, that's because of your unconventional family. And so the challenge, I think, largely rests with parents initially, of recognizing they have everything they need to parent. And those parts that show up need their attention and love. And hopefully lead them to some external building of family and community as well, of here are the other people who, they get it, they know what I'm going through. That rests, I think, a lot on children, because they can tell when they're different. Different isn't bad until somebody tells them that it is. You know, there's this sweet story of when my husband was a little boy, and he and his friend were in the back seat of the car, and long before seatbelts, and they were tapping his mom on the shoulder. And my husband is white, and his friend was not white, and so the little boy said, "She doesn't know which one is tapping her, you or me." And my husband said, "Sure she does, my hand's white." And it wasn't hateful or hurtful or anything. It was just this recognition of like, oh, we're different. So I don't think that that's often the case. I think that when we feel different, it feels like I'm different because something's wrong with me, or we aren't like everyone, or I won't be understood, or I won't be met or welcomed, or...
So the challenges of unconventional parenting, I think, are just adding the layers of the dynamics that come into play. And, you know, I can speak personally from the place of being a parent of a child with special needs, and that adds a lot of layers. I was told by somebody when my child was very young that the research showed that families with children with special needs, that their siblings, the outcome for their siblings is very bad. So that, you know, there's like an 80% chance that my other two children would have serious issues and problems. And so I took that as a mission to prove them wrong and to prove the research wrong, because my middle guy is the one with special needs, and I have an older and younger daughter. And there are a lot of different layers. There was a time period where my attention was so focused on him that they didn't get as much of me as they probably needed. And, you know, that's an example of how I was able to go back as they got older and repair, and even as it was happening, to say and to name, I know that you're not getting as much attention from me as you need, and let's talk about how we can, you know, spend some time together so you don't feel like I've completely abandoned you. And acknowledging it must be really hard for you having a brother with special needs. So that's one that I can speak from a personal perspective. I work a lot with families of divorce, and I think that that's another situation that, you know, the stigma that comes along with that. Parents often, especially single moms, tend to get really hijacked by their own parts for survival, which can create a disconnect in them being able to really understand the emotional experience their child is having, and to see the impact of the separation and the divorce, or to take their comments personally when it's really them just trying to communicate that they're struggling too.
Well, just knowing that like one day I'm going to have a conversation with him about what to do if you get pulled over by the police. And I know that seems like cliche for some people. It's like, well, you don't really have to have that conversation, but there's that anxiety. There's always that fear of what if. You know, what if something happens or he's with the wrong crowd, or, you know, there's a lot of what ifs that are different than if he were not black. From the time that I conceived him and they told me, you know, in the x-ray that it's a boy, there's just a different set of fears and challenges that go with raising a black son and even a black girl. As a black woman, you know, I don't know what it means to be in a world as a black man. So just even that challenge of the different genders and trying to relate to him for who he is, not for what I've experienced. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the mass incarceration rates, you know, it's largely African-American males. When you look at drugs and violence, it's largely African-American males. So when you start to look at numbers and think about probability, it gets really scary.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon in my experience, for people to say, oh, well, that's their fault, they're to blame.
Yeah.
That's why the numbers are so high.
So we think there's something we can do to prevent it.
Yeah.
Like I thought, okay, I need to make sure all the stars are aligned. I need to
Right.
make sure I'm doing everything well. He's got to go to the best schools. He's got to make enough money, and I've got to be this rock star parent
Right.
so that my child doesn't fall into the statistics. You know, safety is important at all times. And courage is not saying don't be safe. Courage is saying be aware, but don't let fear ruin your life. Don't generalize it to where you're afraid of everything and you're constantly looking for the fear to attack you at any moment, right? You're on guard, your body is tensed, everything about you is in defense mode. And you can't connect when you're in defense mode.